Hidden justice of the unspoken mind. How many incidents in life happen before they happen? How many potentials of reality are considered behind your eyes before a decision solidifies one potential? Could the life of the person behind their eyes influence the life outside regardless of if they do anything? In this episode, I would like to look into, in some sense, a very interesting point that if human beings have imagination, they have inner realms, they are in some sense someone who is the colors of the per character can't be all seen from external action. Pretty much Mr. Within finds it fascinating that there is phenomena occurring while there is phenomena being. It's as if the body is being, but the mind is simultaneously being and then moving. Many nights I have wondered, what is it within me that inspires my free will? I can tell you that if life was seen, excuse me, if life was seen as a series of actions, a series of activities, these activities all have inner structure. You see this one word I'm saying here? Do you know how many other concepts are kind of passing? I feel that behind your eyes, this was a simple way I found to talk about it, that in front of your eyes, the world projects the self. Behind your eyes, the self projects the world. And I always thought, what does it mean? A self interacting with the world. When we look at evolution, we feel the self was from here, the self extended from the earth. Even Alan Watts says, just like a tree apples, this part of the universe people. But I feel now the species has to become aware of how the self is projecting the world. It is not just enough to master the scientific vision. It is a lens. I can tell you that my inner realms have been challenged many times. They have been challenged by external circumstances. They have been also challenged by inner turmoils. When I say that I have been, and some other talks I discussed it, that I have been at war with language. Why do I say war? Because language started it first. And we as human beings, evolving in this society of ours, being born and raised in this society, we in some sense identify. And believe it or not, I think the biggest success in anything a person does is what values you identify. You can put any set of 10 people and create an objective, and those 10 people will strive towards the objective, but they will strive based on their value systems. They will approach it differently. When I see humanity, it's like the human species is strangely like a video game where new characters are constantly entering, and some characters finish the game. They go through it, some characters midway, they only need to get to a certain checkpoint, and it's enough for this lifetime. So new characters enter the system. These new characters all get an access to the same format. Do you know, when you look at life nowadays, especially with overpopulation, it just means more people are competing for the same values. And so a civilization is being choked out where it has certain fixed things that it's calling valuable, but the population is increasing. And so if the culture evolves slower than the population increases, it would be like suddenly, imagine you being 12 years old and wearing a t-shirt, but you suddenly had a growth sprout of 10 years in the future, and suddenly that t-shirt, as you were growing, let's say like the Hulk or something, that t-shirt would suffocate you. You see, so it would reach a certain point where we have to, in some sense, as the user of technology increases, we have to advance the technology. You know, either in situations where the technology is increasing, the user of technology needs to slow down. You see, there are many beings on this planet right now, and many of them have no clue why civilization is here. They see it, they acknowledge it, they get what they can out of it, but they don't question, they don't wonder about why the whole thing is here. And so, you know, you can be given many stories, you know, it's like my ancestors, yeah, I'm helping civilization for my ancestors. No, you should only help the ancestor that you will become. What that means is eventually the psychology of the human being who is constantly thinking about the self will move to the other. When it moves to the other, it will feel the justice of its collective presence. When it feels the justice of its collective presence, it's literally like we're all underwater. Suddenly, one person comes out and feels a sort of freedom, puts their head out of water, and they feel a certain freedom. Now, this freedom is very difficult to communicate underwater. When you want to speak underwater, you can't. You can shout, but it's unnecessary, you know, because it's not the space is not made for that communication. Do you know? I was laughing one night because I was considering Fermi's paradox. So Fermi's paradox is Fermi is pretty much this iconic figure that looked at the cosmos and was like, why is it so empty? You know, he was like, he's known for where are the aliens? It's a big question in philosophy that, you know, it took us this long to evolve. Why is it just us? Or could there be others we just can't see? Could there be a simultaneous parallel dimension to the Earth where there are other humanoid creatures but we cannot acknowledge? Or as Terence McKenna would say, is there another tenant in the room? A remarkable way of putting it. So Luigi, I think you've caught on to the episode. I don't believe as if it's listen, believing things doesn't, I mean, in certain contexts, sure, faith requires you to believe to access the archetype. But so, guys, anybody who's tuned in, welcome. Feel free to ask any question, but I'm just gonna go one by one. So, Luigi says, "Do you believe in alternate timelines?" I don't just believe in alternate timelines. I also believe in the void that holds them beyond time. So, what I mean by that is, I can tell you a very close family member of mine uh, felt that at a certain time they remembered their past life. And the concept of past long, if you have a clue, that could be, was around me in my youth. But I was never drawn to the past life. For me, there was something about, because the moment you consider past life, you got to consider future life. You know what that means? That means your past life is a memory for now, and now is a memory for your future. So technically, us living right now, we are being the memories of that will influence our future self. So in regards to alternative timelines, this is something odd. When it comes to the inner realms, it can be a validity, you know? That means there has been times where I've suddenly had an intuitive guidance help me from a dangerous situation. Just literally got my feet. I was in a situation where I could have gotten in a very bad street fight. And there was suddenly, as if my feet, and there was nothing dangerous around me. It was just some random decision I made that kind of saved me from, you know, uh, getting crushed by ignorance. And really, what it was that it was a sudden feeling where where my feet felt stuck to the ground. It was as if a situation where I was walking a direction and my feet didn't want to go. And there was such an instant clarity, as if like behind my eyes, it was as if like, no, this other direction, go there. And there's many times where I'll tell you a unique incident that happened to me. When I was a child, it evidently just happened to me. When I was a child, guys, I have two stories I can share from my childhood. And Luigi, I'm kind of indirectly answering your question about alternative timelines. In my youth, one of these memories I have a remembrance of, conscious remembrance of. One of them I don't remember. I was told that this happened when I was really young, maybe like I don't know, a year old. We had this strange table that had a stone kind of top, but it had wooden legs. But it was such a solid stone table that you would never imagine it can fall. But we had put a statue on it, and it was such a meaningless thing. But evidently, in my childhood, I had gone and played with the leg of this chair, and I was sitting, and my mother had come in the room, and she literally saw this stone thing about to fall, and it just dodges my head, you know? And I'm like this little baby kid, like, like a giant stone thing, like, you know? Another incident where I have a memory, and guys, it was a very unique moment in my life. I mean, I've had a couple more after that, but I'll tell you this one. I was very young. This was in my house in Iran when I was like 6, super young. All I remember is we had this room, and this room and I have a twin brother, by the way. And I was very young. So imagine a 6-year-old me and my 6-year-old twin brother. Okay? So we're in the room. Now there is a light that my parents placed on the room. But me and my brother were so mischievous that we would try to grab everything, right? We would climb like chairs, closets, everything. So there was this light where at the back of it, there was a sort of, I don't know how to explain it to you. Imagine a long closet, like 2 meter closet, less than 2 meters, but you know, a long closet. Okay, it's not connected to the wall. On top of it, there is a lamp, and that wire of the lamp that connects to the plug, that wire was somehow behind the closet. So my brother had coincidentally just been was pulling that, and I was walking to go see my mother in the hallway of the house. Now all I see is I'm walking, and then I go in the hallway and I see my mother is panting, and she's about to faint. You know, as if she literally saw something that was unfathomable for her. It was shocking. And then I see my father run in the room, and my father's kind of holding my mother as she's shocked. And what had happened was I didn't even notice it, but the closet that my brother was pulling the lamp cable up from, that closet had fallen and it fell right behind me, you know? And I didn't even see it, right? Now, there were certain times I've wondered why. I mean, not in a super like, oh my god, like, is this a sign from the stars? Not in that way. It's just that I have wondered that am I staring at my moment of being from another time? That means I have wondered that what I know, is it just from the room of the sensory perception or the ideology spectrum that I acknowledge, or is it from something more? And I can tell you that after some point, especially in 2015, the idea of a future life and past life was no longer of interest to me. As if accessing a universal memory wasn't interesting for me. And not that it's impossible, but it wasn't interesting. Because you see, it's like as we are perceiving an objective realm, as we're perceiving a subjective realm, the objective realm, we have a sort of certainty about its position, but the subjective realm, it changes much quicker. So I would say that it is very possible. So guys, just to say something, this thing was on full screen and I saw a torrent of comments. Guys, I'll tell you this. If you read the about section of this channel, it says just a guy talking about stuff in a universe of a billion trillion stars. I consider that we all are experiencing human life, are we not? So if the person wants to wonder about consciousness as a conscious being, you will soon realize there is no credential. There is nothing. It is your own eyes. Nobody has your eyes. When you realize this, you will get a sense of the unknown. When you get a sense of the unknown, you realize how much of reality is abstract projection, the credentials, everything. You see, it is not that we are trying to reduce life into matter. And in some sense, there is speech. It took us 4 billion years to evolve. And we shouldn't speak because we feel, for example, other eyes see more. You are only left in the vehicle of your own eyes. When you realize this, you do not fight your world. anyways, guys, sorry, there was a there was a comment that was thrown like a spear. I had to respond. Sometimes it's fun catching spears in there. Anyways, guys. So Luigi, I would say that I consider myself not to be a dualistic being at core. So alternative realities all are being witnessed, and I have my experience to share. Welcome everyone. Anyways, guys, um, there's something very unique that if 10 people in a room saw the same film, they will not be taking away the same meaning from the same film. One person will identify with one character, one person may identify with one event, one person may identify with many things. When we lose sight of life, when we try to bunker down in reductive certainty, that is chaos. So for me, I'm just realizing that really all human beings, what are you doing throughout the day? You're physically moving, correct? You're either physical activity or subjective activity. Now, I'm wondering this subjective activity, why do you think people say there's a mystery, the hard problem of consciousness? Because the sudden movement of free will, it becomes something where when one goes to study consciousness, you cannot even avoid a societal dimension to it. You cannot avoid how you have been raised not in just one part of the world, but with the whole world. And especially in this global time, ideas will collide. Turbulence is attention to the inefficient. The mystery still stands. That's why no one can own certainty. And this song that I'm playing in the background is just stopped. All right. So, sorry guys, there's a lot of comments in the chat. Give me a second to read all of them. So, Luigi, I hope that was a good answer. For me, that there's an unknown presence beyond the personality and its various ways it can be fragmented, segmented, or directed in time. You can perceive yourself as being intelligent, space, attributeless, or you can perceive yourself as being any sort of reference motion in matter. Do you know the study of dimensions belongs to the eyes of all beings? It is not. No ivory tower can control the great questions that visit everyone in life. So, okay, so interesting question, Omalka. I'm just reading it. Oh, let me tell you. So, Omalka Arachi, in the comment section, you ask a question that, in some sense, it requires the archetype relationship between the archetype of a son and a father. I'm going to share with you something that actually a poet from a long time ago has given an answer better than I can give, and his name is Khalil Gibran, and I'm going to read you his poem. His poem is on children, and he's speaking to pretty much the future all human beings. So I'm going to share the link here, people can check it out. Let me see where the poem was. Okay, there we go. So Khalil Gibran, so I would say this would be a good answer to the question. Your children are not your children. Khalil Gibran is saying this in his poem. He says, your children are not your children. They are the sons and daughters of life's longing for itself. They come through you, but not from you. And though they are with you, yet they belong not to you. You may give them your love, but not your thoughts, for they have their own thoughts. You may house their bodies, but not their souls, for their souls dwell in the house of tomorrow, which you cannot visit, not even in your dreams. You may strive to be like them, but seek not to make them like you. For life goes not backward nor tarries with yesterday. You are the bows from which your children as living arrows are sent forth. The archer sees the mark upon the path of the infinite, and he bends you with his might, that his arrow may go swift and far. Let your bending in the archer's hand be for gladness, for even as he loves the arrow that flies, so he loves also the bow that is stable. So you got to realize that human beings in different environments have different rooms of thought. Literally, the meaning of the world changes when you're around other people. The meaning of the attention changes. So I would say that we have to kind of realize. I mean, I'm not a parent, but I've definitely had parents, and and I can tell you that what I've noticed is what I wished that could have improved was that, listen, we are human beings. We require each other to advance, but we're not required to be the same. We're not required to be forced to have the same eyes. We can do certain similar activities, similar collective activities. For example, build an advanced civilization. That's something that can engage everybody. But on another level, you have to let life live. And that took me a while to understand that there's no point in throwing stones at a void of your own meaning. It's emotional stability that is superior to intellectual truth or precision. So, Omalka, I would say separate your mind from your environment. And it's as if, like, I think this is universal, but when you're around, for example, children, you can't just be as open as you are around, like, let's say, with your buddies at bar. You know why? Because their eyes and ears can't confront everything yet. That means it's as if you can say the more cruelty that happens to a child when they're young, the more confusion and more distrust they will have in this plane of existence. It's just common sense. If you're a human being who's gone through a rough period, you're living a rough life here, you think you're gonna suddenly want happiness and joy and all this. You're gonna be like, yo man, it's like people will ask you what is the meaning of life, and you'll be like, it's all, are you asking me the meaning of life? It's all pain, it's all you gotta live through, you gotta march through, you gotta dig through. And so for how long will you run in this battlefield? What happens when old age finds you? What happens when the energy levels become more inert? Because I can see the vitality of the life force changing throughout the years. But it changes in ways where it also opens up to new dimensions. So I would say free yourself from your fears, Omaka, and realize that the best thing you can do around children is asking them questions so you get a sense what kind of world they're seeing. Do you know? Do you know so many relationship issues with families, all that it requires is for one of the people to become serious and to go there and be like, okay, what's happening? What are you seeing? What is this life to you? And then you begin to see the inner realms of another. I mean, that's so basic in like every relationship I've been. That's the whole point. You are becoming more intimate with the inner realms of another, as if like your inner realms, your mind, your personality is a sort of melody, and let's say your lover, your future lover, her mind and her inner realms are a certain melody. And if you two can really enjoy each other's melodies, then it's like, it's as if two instruments in the perfect symphony, you know? Then, sometimes they say it's like it takes more than a lifetime, you know, to kind of, I don't know how to say it. You gotta free yourself from your discomfort at some point, because how long will you stay uncomfortable, and is it even efficient for a person to be in discomfort? It is efficient if you have a vision. If you don't have a vision, if you're like a lazy person and you're suffering, Jesus Christ. You know? The only door left for you is like the path of the fool. Because the fool, regardless of its mistake, gets into heaven because it didn't know better. You know, it's an idea, not like a location heaven, into a state of mind. And really, I will tell you, even if they brought in front of me the greatest professors, you know, you will eventually see at some point there is an edge to knowing. That means as long as the unknown stands, don't be enchanted by anyone's linguistic uh, reality, because your own is here, your eyes are here. You know, for me, there I saw something that it's like, trust me, every human being has a desire, but that desire is different, and the desire you have dictates your attitude. Have you noticed? You know, when someone wants something from you, you know, and they're not in a giving mindset, you just feel it from miles away, you know. So, everyone who's tuned in, please state where in the world you're listening from. I think it would be fascinating to know. Thanks, Joey. You know, so I would say this, that it's all about recognizing that our ancestors didn't have the ability to handle the multidimensionality now we have an ability for. And that hidden justice of the unspoken mind. Guys, for me, I will tell you, there's a saying in Sufi dervish culture. I mean, I've prepared something for the listeners today. I'm going to get into the ideology of Hazrat Inayat Khan. I'm like, this is a very kind of dervish kind of episode. Oh, nice. We got listeners from Mississippi, from Nambia, Africa. That's epic. Nice. So the world is here. Who knew? All right, guys, I'm going to actually pay attention right now to the question section. And anytime anybody wants me to go back to the talk, you can just say it in the thing. You know, the nature of these audience live streams are for audience engagement, really. Listen, guys, the whole thing that I'm saying is that we are in a society that is worshiping outer appearances and now is worshiping their complexity, and their complexity is vacuuming us into a technological era where we will go into an ignorance where the world's being destroyed, and we're trying to, through our ideologies and virtual reality, escape it. You know, I feel that it's literally like any civilization. It's like it's like, imagine you find yourself on a boat in the middle of the ocean. You'd be like, all right, who's steering this? When you ask that, you're wondering about the foundations of your civilization. And because your DNA is different, I don't even understand how people can be credited for the same value. Do you know? Because it's as if we're different instruments playing different tunes. We can express a certain level of knowing. You know, for me, guys, I'll tell you, I respect knowledge, but not the educational system, because it's got the system upside down. That means if you literally wondered about the opposite, imagine educational systems paid the students. Imagine instead of teachers teaching, students had to teach to get their grade. Do you know? And it would be a sort of, the teacher would just be the older generations. So imagine classrooms in the future, they're not just going to be classrooms, there's going to be, let me tell you, I call it the School of Athens 2.0. Hopefully this catches on. You know, the School of Athens 2.0 is the idea that for the first time we're finding a global community where the greatest minds can come into the gladiator arena, and the whole digital global audience is like, it's like a coliseum. So it's as if like the brightening of the intellectual dark web. Listen, there is a certain scope of knowledge. It's kind of like this. We all have our inner realms. Every person you love and hate, it's because of your inner realm. Technically, you see something in yourself that you dislike, which you're projecting in the first impression you're getting of someone. You know? What I mean by that, guys, is that, for example, the youngest about on the educational system, it would mean that we would take the hardest and most complex problems of humanity, simplified enough to share it with the youngest children in schools because they have the most vivid imaginations. It's not, their imaginations aren't solidified into the norm yet. Their inner realms are still free, right, based on their experience, not based on how their existence is being told to them. We idolize the past, realizing that we're denying the future's entrance. Okay. I feel all the other questions, guys, can I'll answer it through the talk. My voice lives today because tomorrow is the mystery, and yesterday was the spark. The hidden justice of the unspoken mind is a suggestion that the laws of the universe aren't just forces, but they, in some sense, through the mind, are animated. That means you add a mind and a world in a self, and you get infinite possibilities of various characterhood and various godhood. Your mind begins to play with the dualistic realm, begins to use this linguistic technology, and pretty much you're becoming self aware to how your attention is moving thought for you. So, in some sense, when you notice a presence, I'm like sharing a unique experience here, guys. It deviates from the mainstream, and it's just that I feel there's a presence moving, and it's purely experiential, and subjectivity is just the amplification of reality. That means on some level you are what you see. On another level, the seer is if there's evolution, it means you're beyond your sight. You know, if I had a time machine, I would go back in time and tell my younger self, trust, trust your gut. Trust your vision. And it took me a while, guys. You don't know. Sometimes I think people are dealt different hands in this life. I felt language was kind of released on me like a beast. You know what that means? That means the child opens its eyes, it formulates to a certain level of gentleness its own context. Now, if reality imposes on that context, and when I say reality, it's like inner reality. So you know that your mind can be bullied, but it can also be healed, and it can also even have its own stance. There are certain moments in life where the knowing is not in you, it's in your participation with the flow, with the rhythm. I call these conscious rhythms. And if we as a species do not attempt a new experiential stretching of our language, of our understanding of self, we have rejected our own advancement. What that means is, in some sense, it is very respectable, the achievements of science. Science, I use the word mighty. Science is like, how can I tell you? It's like the maximum use of the sword and the shield. That means science through the medical practices is shielding us, and in other contexts, it is destructive. That means sometimes when you pull the strings of reality, you get access to uncontrollable forces. Imagine from the beginning of your life, there wasn't just one you in the moment. There was an objective you and a subjective you. Now imagine, I don't know how many people have a conscious memory, even, let's say, but I remember a moment in my childhood before I learned language. Do you know what I was? I was just sight as the moment. Simple presence of sight as the moment. And it was through language that something began moving. Do you know, just like the heart has to beat, there's something that is constantly moving the inner realms. And it is not our heart. It is though something about, it's like the heartbeat of the world simultaneously happening at the heartbeat of the self. And You see, it's we have evolved beyond wearing language like truth. That means there's no point of feeling like a peasant or a king in a changing universe. If you do, it's in your inner realms. Do you know how many people they through communication their horizons opened? Literally, someone came and told them, "Hey, man, volcano's about to erupt. Let's get out of here." And the other guy's like, "That's a good neighbor." So, so it's like you know, there is something. There is something that, on some level, yes, you could see it as just nature's movement before language was discovered or symbol attribution was done. Before that, before like think about what evolution has done. You know, I find it that some of the most notable professors, scientists, they don't even comprehend where evolution has come. They're lost in just how Darwin saw evolution. They don't see what's happened now. That it's as if matter has come evolved to a position through this strange eternal urge to continue and remain on the surface of this earth into a thought, wondering if it's a thought. Do you believe? You know, somebody asked me about my childhood, and I was like, yeah, those days when I was just bacteria under the sea billions of years ago, it was a, strange time. I don't know, guys. Vision is meant to be not only shared, but advanced, explored. There's this quote by this Tibetan sage named Sogyal Rinpoche. And I feel this quote is ascribed to him. Hopefully, I'm remembering the correct name. He says, "Unless you conquer anger, all your enemies will be inexhaustible. Unless your inner realms find themselves, unless the inner realms find the equality of all that is with the moment, and unless the outer realms find equality with all that is, you will see space is the bridge between, is the veil between dimensions." Alan Watts spoke about a veil of thoughts. Mr. Within is telling you there's also a veil of space. But that space is the non-dual. It's beyond the language threshold. That means language is a dualistic technology. That means the reason it's like, it's like there's a sort of duality at work. It's as if you can't just love someone, you can also hate him. You can't just hate someone, you gotta love. You see, there's a good and there's a bad. Right? This is morality. All of people wondering, oh man, ethics, what do we do with our lives? How do we keep human beings as ethical creatures, kind, compassionate creatures, like the ancient Greeks had a saying, to tame the savageness of man and make gentler the life of this world. You know, it's kind of realizing like every day is like a candle that is lit, and when you sleep, it goes out. And it's as if during that duration of conscious wakefulness, where was the effort? Where was the effort? You see, we have made ourselves, it's as if we, on a subconscious level, the human psychology You see, I can't avoid that. From there were a couple years, guys, a couple years ago, I just went on a writing spree. And so I kind of found this realization that my whole life I was perceiving the language first, the structure, and then the chaos. I was so obsessed with finding order that I saw the order first, then the chaos. But then the you can say the internal relationship shifted. I started noticing the chaos, and then automatically the countercultural or counter effect of it would be the order. So I would be like, how strange. When I look at chaos, I think about order. When I look at order, I think about chaos. What's going on here? It's like when the person is in hell, they think of heaven. When they're in heaven, they're like, okay, I'm okay. I dodged hell's bullets. Yeah. So it would be a sort of situation where the person is kind of wondering. Uh, that if subconsciously there's a reactive reaction to emptiness, that means every human being that you see normally gently walking in the street, if they were to process like an AI computer all the information in life, it will be the true nature of how the world is would be so different than how we hold it. So it is very fair to say that meaning is a simulation. It is a simulation of energy when it's conscious of itself. Anytime you're unconscious, it's like, who has a philosophy in deep sleep? Who can judge anyone in deep sleep? Oh, how we project worlds through words, only to realize that it's kind of like the simulation. Where is it? It's in nature, you know? Imagine like Gaia, the planet had a voice, and the voice of the goddess appeared, and we were like, Gaia, sorry, the human species is messing up Earth. Sorry about that, you know? And imagine Gaia was like, no, don't worry about it. You're all my children, you're all nature, and this is my intention. And we'll be like, oh my God, we got a messed up Earth. you know? So what I mean by what I mean by that is that that there's something about nature where both chaos and order are authorized. There's birds gently like chirping on trees, and right underneath them, like a lion's chasing a gazelle. So nature is not only multidimensional. It's just that the only reason dimensions or the exploration of consciousness, where all these things have become interesting, because after a long evolutionary process, you know, billions of years in the making, the story of the human being, you know. I was raised in a theocratical society that what that means is any person living anywhere, you cannot avoid how life around you happening is influencing your psychology as part of your ecosystem. That means there's a sort of avenue of meditation where the person is just told to remember, not meditate, just remember your life. And as the person remembers their life, they're kind of realizing how their attention can shift the context of the moment. That means you're like one physical self, but the context and meaning behind it shifts in accordance to your experiences. And something that people haven't said, of course, in these talks, guys, you got to realize I'm walking in the uh, and, in the halls of my school of thought. I've kind of realized every person is sharing a story. Everyone, even the professor is sharing a more, a more expert, more zoomed in story. But it is at the end of the day, regardless of whatever, If all of us became scientists now, we'd be like, oh my god, are we bringing back our findings to a society that people entertain imagination, and it's as if people need a balance between the two? Isn't it interesting? Like, people kind of like, they work very hard, then they go into the movies at the weekend. And so what is that? It's as if like the person's like, I just want to escape reality, and that's why there's the whole, believe it or not, psychedelic culture going on that started in the 80s, because people were like, is it just this? They were like, is it just this? And like, that shock of how the norm was draining the novelty was kind of like made people want to change quickly. And it's very fascinating, guys, because I remember seeing this documentary, and it was showing this man named Shri Prabhupada, who was the originator of the Hare Krishna movement. And it was like, I was like, whoa. And this guy was like this 70-year-old mystic yogi in the mountains, that suddenly gets this vision that he has to come to America, you know? And so he gets on this container, and the person's like, you're too old to get on this. This ship will destroy you, and the guy's like, no, I have to go to America, one of those odd American dreams, different than this man was too materialistic to have the common American dream. He had the uncommon American dream, And so this 70-year-old yogi, he says that on that journey on that boat, he writes it in his journals as if it was like I was a match in a matchbox. And it was like the ship was moving so much, and he was hitting the sides of the container so much that it was like, he's like, all right, this is the life we've chosen. This is the life we live. you know? And what happens is that he comes to America, he prints his books, then he finds himself in that LSD kind of phase in American culture and history, and like the whole hippie movement. And so what he finds is like there's all these people who are like, who really dived into the psychedelic nature of reality, and they find themselves still cluttered, and this Indian dude out of nowhere kind of appeared and is saying, renounce, 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 ask yourself, who am I? That's pretty much yoga, guys. If people haven't figured out that meditation and yoga is pretty much, you are a unique being. So nobody has your eyes, so its secrets are your own search, your own importance. You see, art, there's I remember I gave a talk called What If Art Is Not Dead? And there's a balance between freedom. If you notice that the mind, even in the matrix and many things, people want to free the mind, but they want to control the body. Have you noticed that? And what if there is a freedom that there is no controller? That means suddenly the archetypes of, an invisible creator and a visible creation are in some sense just acknowledged. You have no opinion on it, but you just wonder of the other. And I can tell you, it's like our lives are not just, it's like it's communication is ritualistic. It's literally like anything that consciously is done is strangely ceremonial for the first time as a conscious activity in the cosmos. You see, we are like that creature on this planet that is experiencing the planet in two dimensions, a subjective realm and an objective realm. And they are simultaneous. I say it. They're two eyes that see you. It's like your two eyes that see the same. So what does that mean? That means we are left in a field of study where we have been identifying as objects for so long, and then after some point in history we started identifying with subjects for so long that right now we're left and we're like, what are we? And we're reaching that, what I call, which I think I've termed it the language threshold. I think this is the most important concept in all academia. It is the concept that is like if all of academia is advancing in a vertical dimension, this is suddenly a horizontal dimension, this concept of the language threshold. It is the realization that just like objects, subjects can also be perceived differently. So I want to share with you guys, there's something I do in these shows where I just read the quotes of some figure in history, or a theme. And I was kind of like interested in this man's quotes, which I had read like I think a year ago in one of the talks. Um, I'm just gonna share with you, and this quote. Imagine it's just like another YouTube video. You're hearing what one human being's mind generated. I don't know, like a long time ago. Not that long though. Hazrat Inayat Khan says, "Our virtues are made by love, and our sins caused by the lack of it. What science cannot declare, art can suggest. What art suggests silently, poetry speaks aloud. But what poetry fails to explain in words, music can express. Whoever knows the mystery of vibrations indeed knows all things." So guys, whoever knows the mystery of vibration, that means it's an unknown movement. You know the mystery, you know there's the observer. The witness of your moment is the whole moment. And Ayat Khan says each human personality is like a piece of music, having an individual tone and a rhythm of its own. And Ayat Khan says my heart is tuned to the quietness that the stillness of nature inspires. Hazrat Inayat Khan says some people look for a beautiful place, others make a place beautiful. Wow, that's the secret, guys. Some people look for a beautiful place, others make a place beautiful. And that, imagine that place now being your mind, your awareness, your vision of the world. So much is left not for just external choice, but inner choice. Inner choice only comes when you can observe yourself. And you're not observing your full self, you're observing certain visible ranges of yourself. That means thoughts, they're not, strangely, their design is visible, but not like if I think of an apple hovering in the air right now, I could visualize it. I could see that image right now, but it doesn't mean I can pick up that apple and take a bite from it. So what does that mean? That means the inner realms were aware of its design, but not its visibility. That means somewhere in the neural space of the void, there is something happening there. I don't know. I feel that we have to advance language. That's the secret. All those people who went to the New Age community, the secret is you realize how you, as a being in accordance to your experiences, have accepted language to be the world. I'm a person who says language, like for me, like I love using language as a technology, as a conscious technology, but I hate it as an unconscious identification. I'm like, do you know, we're not our thoughts. Thoughts come and go. It's as if you're not, your awareness is like the unknown presence behind the camera of your biological eyes. And too much materialism is inevitable. I feel if science accepts only a material dimension, it will in some sense be the end of science. Materialism is the end of science. Let me tell you why. Because for eons, if civilization was just built scientifically, it would just be the exploration of physicality. So that would mean imagination is being pushed out of the room. Any ideological system that is trying to lock you down, it means they have not understood the wisdom of a changing universe. You are free not because there's a sort of you deserve it. You're free because the world is. We're on a rock in the middle of nowhere. Where are the rules being made? And what are the filters of the rules? Your experiences. So when a person goes to study their mind, they're not technically studying the mind. The mind isn't an object. The mind is the various ways subjects have arisen, similar to the image of that apple in one subtler planes of abstractions, or aka interrupts. So I am telling you, forget the word imagination is outdated. The word creativity is outdated. The view we have on art is outdated. Because we let the world change us before we changed ourselves. And on some level, you would say, even if we it gave humanity the greatest, how can I tell you? If we gave humanity the greatest a utopia, what do we do with the boredom problem? What do we do when we find heaven and we get bored in eternity? You see, it's not about glorification. I feel after idol worship, we were worshiping objects, then we moved on to what? Worshipping subjects. Language worship, and it's still going on, and it's scary. It's scary when when you see a person just feel they are one sentence they say. No, you are the potential of endless. So the mind doesn't have the limitations the body does, but the mind is like the unknown space where the known body finds itself. Your awareness is like the space, and the planets in the solar system are like your body. And so there is a risk, it's kind of like Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, that game show. What was that? It's like the person could only make one decision out of four. So what that means is many technologies are fighting. You don't know how much thoughts are fighting. How much thoughts are fighting to live on through human attention. I honestly need to get a new keyboard. What is this? It's like when you have a keyboard that sounds like an old typewriter. That's when you know you need a new keyboard. So I'm sorry, guys. Uh, this was on mute. But I wanted to say, guys, I need a quick few minute breather, and I'll be back. So thanks for anyone who's tuned in so far. guys. Sorry for the intermission if it was a bit long, but anyways, to continue. We went on a tangent. We were in the quote tunnel for Hazrat Inayat Khan. He says, I can see as clear as a daylight that the hour is coming when women will lead humanity to a higher evolution. I have known good and evil, sin and virtue, right and wrong. I have judged and been judged. I have passed through birth and death, joy and sorrow, heaven and hell, and in the end I realize that I am in everything, and everything is in me. Toward the One, the perfection of love, harmony, and beauty, the only being, united with all the illuminated souls who form the embodiment of the Master, the Spirit of Guidance. Living in the world without insight into the hidden laws of nature is like not knowing the language of the country in which one was born. Exactly. You know? That means there's a wonder of our inner realms that is the mystery of our objective realms. And it's as if where the inspiration is coming from, that's also where the mystery is. What is animating human conscious activity towards a deeper stare into the mirror of life? Hazrat Inayat Khan says the only way to live in the midst of inharmonious influences is to strengthen the willpower and endure all things, yet keeping fineness of character and nobility of manner together with an everlasting heart full of love. Hazrat Inayat Khan says when one bell is rung, by the sound of that one bell other bells will also vibrate. So it is with the dancing of the soul. It produces its reaction, and that again will make other souls dance. The Buddha said this too, guys. It's pretty much like the minds of human beings. They're like candles that can light each other, pretty much. Like we can, as much as we can kill each other, we can also ridiculously advance each other. You know. Hazrat Inayat Khan says the words that enlighten the soul are more precious than jewels. I don't know what kind of jewels this guy's buying. I'm joking. Hazrat Inayat Khan says when we pay attention to nature's music, we find that everything on the earth contributes to its harmony. Yeah, you know, you have no choice, really. Hazrat Inayat Khan says spiritual progress is the changing of the point of view. Yeah. That means you're not just a point of view, you're viewing a point in a certain way. Hazrat Inayat Khan says if people but knew their own religion, how tolerant they would become and how free from any grudge against the religion of others. Alright? He says everything in life is speaking in spite of its apparent silence. And guys, you know what that means? That's another way of, I can share a nice Zen story here. what he's saying here, everything in life is speaking in spite of its apparent silence. It means just even linguistic professors like, the likes of Steven Pinker and Noam Chomsky, they say there was meaning before there was language. So that means we were like our caveman like ancestors, primitive ancestors were making grunts at each other. And that was like that meant something, but it wasn't a language. It wasn't an established symbolic kind of system and technology. Treating language like a technology, guys, it heals the mind by just making it realize it's natural from the beginning. It's like kind of the thing from nature versus nurture, or we can even say it's kind of like it's very hard to smell roses beside a dumpster. And it's kind of like an unnatural reality is set in motion, and a natural reality was set in motion before we were here, you know? So when Hazrat Inayat Khan says everything in life is speaking in spite of its apparent silence, there's this Zen story where there are these two imperial guards, and they've been standing outside for so long, but they're honorable and noble guards, They're like, all right, we got this gate, nobody's getting through. We've trained our whole lives, we've trained for this moment to defend this gate. And for many days, nobody even accessed that gate. Like that gate, nobody would come. They were just standing all day. And so what happened is that one of the guards suddenly is looking at the distance and sees the flag and the flagpole and sees the flagpole of the kingdom, kind of the wind's blowing it. And for a second he says, wait a minute, is the wind moving the flag or is the flag moving? And he's like, no, the flag's moving. I'm seeing the flag move. He looks at his friend. He's like, hey man, you see that flag? It's the flag that's moving, not the wind. And the friend's like, no man, without the wind, how is the flag moving? It's the wind moving. The flag's not moving. It's the wind. And to their surprise, a Zen sage who never comes down from the mountain was just walking by. They run up to the sage. They say, kind sage, which one's moving? The wind or the flag? Please tell us. And that means the question was so deep that they had to step out of their kind of status quo bound more normality to kind of go and get the answer. The sage looks at them and says, no, it's not the flag moving. Then one of them gets super happy. Then he's like, no, it's not the wind moving. And then they both oddly look at the thing like, what is this? And then and then the sage looks at him, but the mind is moving. And then it's like a kind of nirvana blow to these guards. It's like they didn't expect this kind of fight. Because what it was is that they suddenly realized that it's their attention that is keeping the meaning in the objective phenomena. So the same way the mind is moving, it's the same way that Hazrat Inayat Khan is saying everything in life is speaking in spite of its apparent silence. That apparent silence is the activity of the mind. So you gotta feel like this is an abstract concept for human beings, but you are creating your silence because you're identifying with the noise. So when you identify with the temporary, yes, it's temporary. What are you gonna do? It's like that's the system. The body is temporary. And if it was, and even if you thought if it wasn't temporary, you'd be like, okay, what's the point of immortality? Wouldn't immortality get boring? So you would eventually see after some point that these are archaic attempts to rekindle the unknown life of the universe in the eyes of man. And there's an oscillation, guys. You think now we're all secular in today's modern age. But in back in the day, if you didn't believe gods were walking on the clouds, you on the clouds in ancient Greece, you were the fool. So you see, there's a shift. It's like a pattern. We're kind of like this singular. We're like this oscillating between a multidimensional perception and then the singular and void perception. So it's as if one dualistic experience is like something and nothing. Then the other experience is how is the something being moved while there's also nothing and transition states through the nothing. That means I've been journeying through my nothingness my whole life, guys. So has our whole planet. And every time when I'm kind of like some people might find this ridiculous, but I feel the deep sleep to be the craziest dream. Hazrat Inayat Khan says, we grown-up people think that we appreciate music, but if we realize the sense that an infant has brought with it of appreciating sound and rhythm, we would never boast of knowing music. The infant is music itself. This poet, this Sufi dervish poet by the name of Jalaluddin Maulana Rumi, he also says, don't just write poetry, be living poetry. Live a beautiful moment, not just have beautiful things. Don't try to just get beautiful things. What that means is it's the same idea with mindfulness. That means I think there's a value with seeing a sort of similarity between these two ideas. Hazrat Inayat Khan says, I have seen all souls as my soul and realized my soul as the soul of all. That's a moment when, it's like, then what? Hazrat Inayat Khan says, the gardener uses both roses in the flower bed and thorns in making fences. Intellect is the knowledge obtained by experience of names and forms. Wisdom is the knowledge which manifests only from the inner being. To acquire intellect, one must delve into studies, but to obtain wisdom, nothing but the flow of divine mercy is needed. It is as natural as the instinct of swimming to the fish, or of flying to the bird. Intellect is the sight which enables one to see through the external world, but the light of wisdom enables one to see through the external into the internal world. You can say he's doing a great attempt. Like what he would in this quote, Hazrat Inayat Khan has kind of like restored something very crucial, given words to something very crucial. That there is a mode of the purpose of life as a doer. You're an individual, you're in the world once, what are you doing? There's that view, and then there's a view of where is the individual really? And the concept of individualism requires the collective. That means that this is why I saw phenomena in my high school that I was shocked. I saw this kid and this kid, like he was like another Persian kid, in the school. And I remember talking to him, and I saw you can see the true nature, in how a person is comfortable with language, their true personality arises. That means if I spoke in Farsi, like my personality may appear totally different than how it's appearing here. The language is even in a different cultural program. So this kid, the moment the pressure was too much pressure was put on him externally, he changed. That means civilization is not giving out fighters. imagine like it's giving out spoiled warriors, like the warriors in the battlefield. The general's like, "Are you ready?" And the warrior's like, "No, I don't like the weight of my sword in my hand." And the general's like, "What the fuck? We're about to run into battle." Oh man. Anyways, guys, I'm going to read a few more quotes and then I'm going to get to the topic. And then if there's anything the audience wants to share, I'll engage that. The first lesson to learn is to resign oneself to the little difficulties in life, not to hit out at everything one comes up against. If one were able to manage this, one would not need to cultivate great power. Even one's presence would be healing. And this is so important, guys, because there's different cultural programs, because different human beings are living in different parts of the world, and they've kind of name tagged that chunk of the world, and that the resources are split up. And that's why I've kind of created the idea of civilization 2.0, that if we were living in our skies, the all you can eat buffet is no longer held. As if imagine you went to an all you can eat buffet and it was like suddenly, how can I tell you, somebody was holding the vegetables and you're like, "Hey man, let me get the vegetables, you know. I paid to be part of this civilization. I was born into this civilization. Like let me experience this of civilization." And then the person's like, "No man, you gotta be a citizen of the vegetable kingdom." You're like, "What the?" You know what I mean? Like it becomes a situation when you're like, in a two-dimensional plane, overpopulation, disaster, stress, high depression statistics, make it three-dimensional space. The moment everybody has space, they will have the comfort for creative innovation to pour out of their inner realms into the outer. So what I'm trying to say is that we can't. It's enough. For how many centuries do we want to treat ourselves as just atoms? And there's something about the spirit of the personality that's why we call it free will. The mystery is freedom's presence, not the limitations of the senses. How you're free is something with an energy. Like right now, me and you are not in a dream. Regardless of how much we think, right now you're hearing what I'm saying. So me and you are creatures that where we just wake up, we go through activities throughout the day in a civilization, and then we sleep. So I am realizing now that civilization is inefficient, so the person is in some sense just living inner lives. And I'm like, all right, so first stage, get people's inner realms pouring out, get a new wave of a neo-artistic renaissance, and then it becomes a sort of the multidimensional renaissance, I remember calling it. And this multidimensional renaissance is when 8 billion beings realize, whoa, 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 I'm not just a chunk of matter. Only that's not my only value. My value is how the free will in a space-time continuum can wonder about perception and march through, you know? Hazrat Inayat Khan says Sufism is not a religion or a philosophy. It is neither deism nor atheism, nor is it a moral, nor a special kind of mysticism. Being free from the usual religious sectarianism, if ever it could be called a religion, it would only be as a religion of love, harmony, and beauty. And that's the thing, guys. Some people see the sunshine, some people stay shy in the shade. So, that's pretty much like those two sentences I saw my whole childhood. Hazrat Inayat Khan says there's no end to one's faults. To think of them makes one humble. That means you recycle your mistakes through humility. Hazrat Inayat Khan says what one really wants is attracted by one, and one is attracted by what one wants. That means the attention. But you're not just where your attention is pointed to. You're like the potential. You're not just a creature of matter. You're also a creature simultaneously of space. But the space is attributeless observance. So it's like sight. It's like if emptiness had vision. you know? But there's a presence here. This presence is the unchanging witness of all the candles you have blown in your life. Birthday candles. Hazrat Inayat Khan says the soul of all is one soul and the truth is one truth. Under whatever religion it is unhidden. Selfishness keeps man blind through life. Repose is the secret. Of all contemplation and meditation, the secret of getting in tune with that aspect of life which is the essence of all things. When one is not accustomed to take repose, one does not know what is behind one's being. You see, guys, these talks of mine, if you notice there, I'm commenting on the inner realms mainly. Language is an inner realm activity, is it not? Right now, let's say you're a person in this world and you've judged someone, right? Who is the one judging? Do you know? And we're on a rock in the middle of nowhere, so where is the linearity? That means there's this philosophical question where if two spheres in a vacuum were spinning around one another, how could we tell which one is spinning around which? So you see, there's a sort of unknownness here. Okay, this unknownness is something that is like the feeling our ancestors had when they went and explored a part of the forest they had never explored. And now we, as the children of 2020, as those who are alive now, we are now exploring the forests of our inner realms. We are pioneers of our own natures now, not the outer nature of like just living in forests. We're just like in a more kind of like, all right, civilization's going somewhere. Let's see where it's going. There's one life we can. We only have one. It's like you have. It's like one life. You have participation ability in the civilization. Now, how much can you see your mind live, evolving man rather than taking him back to the cave? We're taking him beyond the stars. Hazrat Anand Khan says, when we are face to face with truth, the point of view of Krishna, Buddha, Christ, or any other prophet is the same. When we look at life from the top of the mountain, there is no limitation. There is the same immensity. Life, as Rajanath Khan says, life is a place where it is necessary to move gently, whether it be in thought, speech, or action. The rhythm must be controlled. The law of harmony must be observed in all that one does. If there is anything that will bring satisfaction, it is diving deep into love. And then we shall realize that there is nothing which is not just. We shall never again say that anything is unjust. This is the point the wise reach, and they call it the culmination of wisdom. So he says, then we shall realize that there's nothing which is not just. So that means we're realizing there's an underlying known conscious activity. That means like we might not know what's going on in the world, but it's like what Hazrat Inayat Khan is saying here is like the universe knows what it's doing. We may not know what the universe is doing, but the universe knows what it's doing. And he's saying it's a sort of rhythmic abidance, and love really means that you've opened up your inner realms. That's why they say without vulnerability, you can't have love. There's like too much armor in front of your true self to actually be a human being. So that's something to be mindful in society. You know? And as Inayat Khan says, joy and sorrow are the light and shade of life. Without light and shade, no picture is clear. Wow. So like kind of it's like the clarity of your character is based on how you're seeing chaos on order. So anyways, guys, this guy was like a Sufi back in the day. These viewpoints are kind of archaic. That means they're old school. I feel in our current modernity, I mean, hidden justice of the unspoken mind would pretty much mean that there's so many people who their voices in their inner realms are asking for change, but we don't hear it. And it's a hidden justice. I mean, like, just think about, like, my grandpa shared a story. This is a rare story I remember from my grandfather. He said that when he was young, he was in the playground and he was like, he went to a younger kid, and in front of his friends, he just slapped that younger kid in the face, you know? And his friends came and gave him props, and they're like, yo, you're a tough guy, man. Good job, you know? Good job. Let's promote chaos, anarchist toughness. You know, And so my grandfather, he says on his way home, there was this newspaper stand, and he just looked to look at one of the headline of the newspaper stand, but the newspaper stand was so angry that this angry berserk newspaper stand comes out and he just slaps my grandfather in the face on his way back to going back from school beside the newspaper stand, that he in some sense suddenly it's like as if like some other person out of nowhere came and suddenly there was a justification for that kid to get slapped. You know, like it wasn't. My grandfather was saying, "Don't hurt anybody, because then something in life would hurt you." It's like you're not hurting the other; you're actually hurting your mind. Your mind's gonna be like, "You hitting me, bro." So yeah, our inner realms echo in different ways. I feel that there's a presence influencing the personality, but that presence is a field, like it's field like. And you know, sometimes you gotta be that warrior that just looks at that army running and you're like, all right, what can we do? You know, he raises his sword and he's like, it doesn't, I shouldn't waste energy running to them. They're running to me already. I'm looking at the wallpaper, guys. Anyways, thanks for tuning, everyone. And I hope this episode was helpful. Much blessings and namaste.